Give me a minute and we'll talk about a Boeing 777 having to make a crash landing in the far, far east of the Russian Federation today. Now, we've talked about the crisis in the aviation world that is the nightmare of the Russian Federation. Right now, the Russian Federation has a red flag from the Civilian Aviation Authority. Who else has red flags from the Civilian Aviation Authority? Bhutan, the Congo, Liberia, and Russia. That's it. That's it. I mean, holy shit. So out here, now look, this is going to happen. It's going to get worse. Thank God the 422 people on this plane were okay because of the expertise of the pilots, no doubt. But not every pilot's going to be an expert. And not even your expertise will save you at 30,000 feet if you have a critical failure. And that's what's happening increasingly in Russian aviation. And there's a good reason for it. Russia has in its civil aviation fleet about 800 planes. Now, a year ago, it was 900. Of those planes, only 150 of them are Russian-made. 70% of the fleet, which handles 90% of the air traffic in the country, are foreign-made. And the Russians, when they decided to commit genocide against their neighbors in Ukraine, lost their contracts and leases with the leasing companies, which are mostly Irish. These planes aren't owned by the Russian Federation. They're stolen from Irish leasing companies. That's the reality. And because of that, they get no software updates. They get no authentic parts. They get no service contract agreements. Nothing is being honored, and the fleet is falling apart. At least 25% of Aeroflot's fleet, right? Aeroflot is a carrier, a Russian, I believe it's a state-owned Russian commercial carrier, Aeroflot. They have about 200 planes. 50 of them are currently in garages being cannibalized for parts. This is not a situation that can continue. It's simply not. It will not be long before Russia has regressed to a point where there is no aviation, where there are no flights from Moscow to anywhere on a Russian plane. That's where they're headed. That's exactly where they're headed. And in a country with 11 time zones, that's a problem because you depend on being able to get places to rule, don't you? And the Russians are particularly dependent on trains and planes because this vast continental-sized country needs to be ruled because there are lots of peoples in it that don't want to be ruled and increasingly are looking for their independence. It seems to me if I was a Tuvan, if I were a member of the Tuvan people, having suffered for 500 years under Russian imperial control, and I saw that the air communication and ability to move in the air was degrading, that the enemy of my enemy in Moscow were bombing the railroads and cutting the lines of communication for the enemy, I might join in. I might start a partisan group of my own. Maybe take over the airport so they can't fly troops in. Maybe bomb the rail station so they can't bring them in on rail. And then put some guys with RPGs on a narrow valley pass that they have to pass through to get to where I am. Because there's still Rosguardia. There's still the National Guard. There's still the Wagner elements that were incorporated into Russian civil defense. The army is being eviscerated every day in Ukraine, make no mistake. The elements, the equipment of the army are being destroyed every day in Ukraine. The ability of Russia to make war is being degraded every day. If I were a member of a group that wanted freedom from Moscow after 500 years of oppression, now is the time to strike. Kill this beast while it's wounded. Enough. Enough. Draw up your constitutional conventions. Draw up your Bill of Rights. Join with the Ukrainian special forces and GUR units and get your freedom now. Strike while the iron is hot. Good luck.